What's up, people? VMB podcast, the lockdown chronicles with the boys. We're all back. Me, Rory Spooner, James Veck, Reese Henley. You know what we do. So right, lads, what is the order of business? Where would you all like to start? Seeing as we haven't done a podcast in so long.
Well, Reese is the guest. He hasn't been for a while, so I'll leave it up to Reese. So
Reese, go on then, Reese. Take the lead because you haven't been on in a minute. So I already know what you want to discuss first. So just throw it out there. Go on.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Obviously lockdown. We can't start without mentioning it. That's why we're doing it like this. Nice to see you've got Victory and Vices behind you, pal. I've got a blank wall here.
You get what you pay for, Reese. That's how it is.
I would buy just about anything right now. I'm so bored without the football or any sport of any kind. I'm missing it. But Bundesliga is back soon. Premier League, I don't know if that's going to come back at all.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that then, because for me, from a footballing standpoint, obviously, as much as I love it, it's kind of taken a back seat with everything that's gone on. You know, health and safety first, which is why, as you say, we're doing this. Now, I was going to message you guys the other day. I mean, about it all, because obviously, as you say, Reece, the Bundesliga is coming back. Well, supposedly coming back. I mean, it's subject to certain terms, conditions, and delays, I suppose. And the Premier League, well, we got more deaths than anyone in this country other than America. So who knows when that will come back. I've come out publicly and said I would be happy to have no football till September. A transfer window between maybe the end of July and the start of September, and football back September. And I would null and void this season, but let me know your thoughts on what you would like to do.
I think you would be in a huge minority there, not wanting football back as soon as possible. I don't care. I think they're all overpaid. Get them out there onto the pitch. I don't care. Gloves, masks. They can all wear snoods again if they want. Just get them onto the pitch and get my boys back in action. I can't wait to watch Brucey's Mags have 20% possession again.
The thing is, right, is that from the financial perspective, it's been said somewhere that a lot of the players are happy to take pay cuts, but they're not being accepted. Like, it's not the way that they want to do it financially. So I don't think it's the case that you say the players are overpaid and they get paid huge sums of money, but a lot of them have volunteered at their salaries. But I don't think it's as straightforward as that. Yeah, and it's financially is the big problem for the Premier League, because it's all money, isn't it? And we're the biggest money spinner league that there is in world football. So you got the whole health side of it. Yeah, you know, at the moment the Bundesliga are talking about a date that football's going to come back, like, for good, and we're still talking about trying to find the date where we can discuss a date about football coming back. Do you know what I mean? So we're just so far behind. Like, Sky Sports is like, oh, May the 15th is the day where people are going to come in an office and talk about football maybe coming back on this date. Like, that's how far we are behind. So I think you saying September, Spoon, I mean, that could be quite realistic. But of course, I want to see football back, whether it's behind closed doors or not. But if it's just not safe to do so, and we're doing things not correctly to do it, then obviously it's not worth it, is it?
From a player's perspective, right, it's interesting, Reece, obviously you talk about the money aspect, because a lot of people will use the money aspect, as we've seen throughout lockdown with, you know, government and many people on Twitter, people I've had a little ding-dong with as well online. They use the money aspect of football to almost create a narrative like, well, irrespective of how unsafe it is, you should still be out there. What we're all practicing is social distancing. You can't social distance on a football pitch. So for me, where do we draw a line? Because ultimately, football can't stop until a vaccine. You can't just go, right, we're going to draw a line on the football till we find a vaccine, because that might take years. So what do we do, lads? Where do we go?
I think with what you just said, yeah, of course, it's impossible to socially distance from a football pitch. No one's disputing that. I think the main point that clubs overseas and also what we're discussing in the UK as well is how to make it that it would be safe to all get on a football pitch and have that football game, so that anything goes well on that football pitch. I think the comment that's been made is to have a quarantine period with team camps, as you might do in a World Cup, and then obviously work in that way. In that the players that aren't infected can all, we know they're not infected because they've been tested, they can all get onto a football pitch. My concern with that is that you've got things like stewards, which will surely still need to be there. journalists and cameramen who will need to be there. And also, what about all the time after training? They surely don't eat, sleep, and live in those camps. And if they do, is that really conducive to a good footballing? I mean, that's got to be damaging to your mental and physical well-being, surely, to be cooped up like that. Even if you're eating, training perfectly, not being able to see your wife and children, or not being able to go out and enjoy the things that you want to go out and enjoy because you're contracted to be stuck in that camp.
I think something that we're forgetting as well is that they're talking about testing players and potentially testing them multiple times. Now, the United Kingdom as a country, we haven't exactly been like an example with our testing. Other countries have shown us exactly how we should have done it before us, and we haven't taken the good advice. Our testing as a country, even to those who drastically need it, is not great. So trying to justify testing footballers, do you know what I mean, to get them on a football pitch when we can't test our NHS workers or service workers, I just don't think you can justify it. So, like you said, you would have to test them multiple times, and you have all the issues Reece mentioned that comes after that and doing that. But I don't see how we can get away with testing them if people who need it on the front line aren't being tested.
Yes, I agree with you. It's one of those, I'm conflicted, because on the one hand, I desperately want it back. I want it back tomorrow, but I can't think of a way logistically it can work.
And that's the problem, is that it's a want. We all want it because we love it so much. We loved it anyway, and we knew how much we loved it. But now you've completely taken it away from us. It's like the withdrawal symptoms are massive, but they still don't stack up today enough to warrant it to come back unless there's a vaccine. Or like if in other countries everyone was being tested, or all the services were being tested, then you could warrant funding going towards athletes being tested. But like, there's just no way to justify it, is there, currently?
Let me ask you guys a question. I'd be interested to see what you guys say about this. Let's take Formula One as an example, maybe boxing or some other extreme sports. These people are basically gladiators. They know that when they go to work, there's a fair likelihood, more than a fair likelihood in most, that rather than most sports, that they could die or get hurt as part of their sport. Should we not say to these footballers, well, it's okay if you don't want to, but there is a chance that we can't control all of this. We're going to put X, Y, and Z in place to try and keep you safe. But we want to get football restarted because it's going to cost us hundreds of millions of pounds not to do so. There you go.
That's interesting then, because the question you would ask next is, what's the price of life? Because it's different from person to person. Like Sergio Aguero came out and he was like, well, I'm scared to go back, and a lot of other players are scared to go back. What's really interesting when you talk about, obviously, the mental well-being of athletes and the physical well-being, I think I might have messaged you both the other day about it. But I watched the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I've seen it, but I've not watched it.
Well, lads, you're in for a treat with that, right? Because it is a cracking watch. But basically, it highlights college football and what it does with college football. Aaron Hernandez, he's on the phone to his auntie or his mother, I don't know, whoever it is. They get a lot of college players who play college football or NFL football, and they basically confirm what we already knew, is that those players, they just use the shit out of them. Like, those players, their bodies are getting absolutely battered, and they're basically given painkiller after painkiller after painkiller, and there's no regard for their mental health or physical health. It's literally just keep the money coming in. You've got to be on that pitch. You've got to keep the money coming in. And some of these lads were broken. And I think we do have to take that into account. I don't think, imagine the first football coronavirus death. You imagine a Harry Kane or someone drop dead because of a coronavirus. I mean, it's a lot to think about, lads. I mean,
it's hard, isn't it? Because Ayrton Senna died in Formula One, and he was the biggest name in sport. Sometimes people die as a result of sport. Fabrice Muamba nearly dropped dead on a football pitch. I guess it goes back to what you were saying about the price of life. How important is it to these sportsmen to do the sport that they've done all their life? I guess some degree of a unanimous decision with the footballers.
Problem is with the situations you described, like Senna and Wamba, those are like events that we couldn't predict, and they're anomalies, massive anomalies. Like, we know about the coronavirus and we know what it can do. I mean, and simply just saying, okay, we're aware of this, and we're happy to take a chance on it is not the same. And like, the thing is, if we also allow certain sporting events to take place, most of these sporting events require paramedics or medics, especially MMA, boxing, well, most sports, to be honest, and that you're taking resources then, aren't you, from other areas that so desperately need it. I know I'm not being negative. I'm just like shutting down the opportunity of sport coming back. But like, people keep using the word unprecedented. It is the most unprecedented thing we're probably likely to see in our lives and most of our lives. And whatever idea that you try to come up with of how it can come back, there just always seems to be something that just shuts it down. You know, in my opinion, anyway. That unless you get a vaccine, what else are you going to do?
I think the problem is that every single one of us out there, maybe apart from you, Spoon, I think you might be the only one in the world, but every single other person that I know wants desperately for sport to return. I think the problem is that we're all just too afraid to just admit that it's probably right that it doesn't come back until it's safe. I'm in the minority for finally in life for a good reason, a valid reason. I wanted it back yesterday and the day before that, right? But like, I fully understand that if I was in those players' positions, I would have serious reservations about being on a pitch with, with not just you've got obviously everyone subs, you've got physios, you've got kit men, you've got God knows who else, first team coach, you've got assistant coach. There's just so many people, and there's so much. I can just see it going horrendously wrong. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't know when it should come back, but I do know that I think it might be a bit too soon for me for June. I'm not. I play devil's advocate though. If stores like, I don't know, let's name a clothing shop, River Island, Next, something like that. If those stores reopen and those employees have to go back to work, then how is that more essential than sport? If that makes sense. Yeah. So I guess if you were saying that it's not safe to go back to playing sport in a massively controlled environment, then how can you justify anyone going back to work in an uncontrolled environment? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing at the moment, is that there isn't really anything that's open that's not essential. And whilst you're right, like River Island and stuff, they aren't open currently. I would assume that things like that aren't essential would have to open under the same conditions and at similar timing. Surely it would make sense, because you like you say, you couldn't have things like that open and then make a case and say, oh, but you can't open that, because someone will just say, well, why is that different? But I suppose it's probably worse as well. Like, you're surrounding people where you're sweating, and like I think the level of lack of the hygiene sort of situation is slightly different than being in a clothing shop versus on a football pitch. But I get your point. One can't open without the other, and things do have to open eventually, because the economy is going to take a huge
there has to be a gradual exit of this lockdown. I'm just glad I don't have to make those decisions, because I don't have the answers.
I did read the other day, if the Premier League can't restart, we can talk about if it starts in September, if it starts in December, and so on. But if it can't restart this season, so even if it starts in July or August for next season, if they can't finish the season we're currently in, they're going to owe BT and Sky upwards of £600 million. I don't know what that's going to do to the Premier League. I mean, do you think they can foot a £600 million bill? I'm not sure. I think
there's a lot of clubs that are going to be going under. I think, when I say going under, I mean, not going under per se. I mean, it's certainly lower down the leagues. I think there might be a few clubs that potentially would go back.
It's a huge sum of money. The Premier League as an entity on its own is stinking rich, obviously, and I think it could absorb it. At what cost, I don't know. But I think it is going to get to that point where people start asking, but things are going to cost this much, and this is going to cost that much, and if we don't do this, it's going to cost this much. But then you get to a point where you just go, like, it is what it is. Like, if you don't, people are going to die. So either the government has to step in, or the money would have to be absorbed where it can be absorbed by the relevant people. Do you know what I mean? And companies.
The problem as well is that I think the FA will have the final decision, I'm guessing, because the Premier League can't say one thing and the EFL say another. But on the one hand, I think that Premier League clubs have the means with which to carry on when they're told to carry on under whatever circumstances. But with the EFL clubs, I don't think so, because if they were to go, let's say 6 months without football, they still have to pay those players, but they're not getting any gate receipts. They're not getting any money coming in apart from maybe merchandise that's sold online or things like this. They're not getting anywhere near enough money to sustain the money that's given to those players. So you'll see a lot of players either terminating their contracts, which will mean the clubs will then have a knock-on effect of having to go out and buy or sign free agents when the time comes. The more sensible thing would be for players to just take sort of a no pay at the moment, but it's not going to happen.
Good luck with that, by the way.
You'd have to hope that obviously if it starts back up, if it's behind closed doors, that TV companies are obviously still going to be there, and obviously they're still getting the large sums of money from the television deals. Obviously they lose a lot of match day revenue, and if you can they'd have to try and find an agreement between the players to take a small percentage of pay cut. Do you know what I mean? And find something in the middle ground. Like if you want your club to survive, like so many clubs are going to be affected in this situation. So it's not like a player can say, "Oh, if you're not going to pay me this, I'm going to go to these who will," because it's likely to affect most people. So what, are you just going to stop playing football and not get paid, or are you going to take a pay cut?
Yeah, it's as good as anything. I mean, I'm sure if a lot of people's companies just said to them, is it okay if we don't pay you for 3 months? I'm sure every single person would say, well, no, it's not okay. And I'm sure that's what the footballers would do too, and rightly so. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment. It looks like we've come to the agreement that it's probably not sensible and probably not even logistically possible to restart it safely for the moment, which I guess means that then they will have to either cancel the season, or they will have to award various accolades and relegations and things to the relevant club. So let me ask you guys, what do you think will be the correct outcome in this case?
The thing is with this is that there's not actually any consistency with other leagues at the moment. So it's not like we can point to say, oh, the Dutch league and the French league and this league all did this, so it's likely to do this, because the Dutch league have just ended it and nobody wins anything. And then the French league have voided it and PSG win everything, or win the league, and that's it. There's a lot of talk about the Premier League null and voiding it and there being like no relegations, but then there being promotions from the Championship, so only like the automatically promoted go up. So the other leagues have extras, and then it has to be absorbed like next season or the year after. There's some people saying that Liverpool should get the title, but I don't think I haven't heard like anything officially of what it looks like it's going to be, other than the league could be void. Yeah. But we know voiding the league doesn't say anything about what's going to happen. It just means that they'll cancel it. But I have no idea. Like they talk about sporting merit will decide like the Champions League places, which is fair enough. But like, what do you say to Leeds and Quiz in second place in the Championship that you can't come up? Yeah. You know, nobody's going down. Like you will upset. Somebody will be upset.
I've come up with a potential solution to this problem. Now, I'd imagine that if you're going to award a Premier League title, then realistically it should be to Liverpool, of course, but it should be to a side that is clearly a cut above the rest and is deserving of that. We can talk about the validity of any Premier League title given to Liverpool in this circumstance and whether it should be given to them. But the idea I've got for all of the lower down things, so we'd have to decide that on sporting merit, give all teams a points per game and calculate that over the course of a full season. Whoever is top in that circumstances, in my opinion, and bottom, of course, should go into a playoff draw. The bottom 3 teams in the Premier League should go into 3 playoff games. 18th should play 3rd in the Championship and a playoff before the start of next season. Maybe perhaps at Wembley, neutral grounds, whatever you need to do. Just decide the leagues on that one-off fixture and then get on with it. All clubs agree to that one-off game Otherwise, no one's going to say, "Oh, we're scared to play that game."
I couldn't see him agreeing to that. When you analyse the risk versus reward scenario, I think there's too many people that would disagree.
Perhaps if you put on the table that it's that or nothing, then they take it.
There'd be another option. There'd be so many people kicking off.
It's like I said, right? There is no happy ending for everyone.
There's not.
There never was. If the season played out normally without coronavirus, obviously there would be sad endings and good endings for clubs, but they would obviously be in their own hands. Now that it's coming down to possible scenarios, there are going to be clubs that aren't happy, and like if you do it the way you said, Reece, even the teams in the middle that might have been pushing for playoffs or pushing for Champions League places are still going to be unhappy, because if they're in the middle and they're not involved in relegation or promotion, and we just say, well, you guys are fine, you're in the middle, don't worry about you, there's still people who won't be happy with that. There'll be court cases left, right and centre, people challenging situations.
I think that's the case anyway. I mean, you look at the French league, I don't know how to say the club name, Means, I think it is. Then they've actually been relegated from the French league, and they've submitted an appeal to the Court of Arbitration in France to try and take the French league to court. You look at the league table, I think they were 10 points adrift of safety and definitely going to go down. So I think you're right in what you're saying. It doesn't matter what happens, there's going to be court cases flying left, right and centre. But realistically, if you're mid-table and you're told you're not going to get promoted or relegated, then you probably just go, all right, fair enough. As a Newcastle fan, I can say the same thing.
The thing is with teams in relegation is, like 8 or 9 times out of 10, especially in the Premier League, there's always that one team that escapes relegation, who is either close to it or in it for most of the year. They might not be rock bottom, but there's always someone who survives, like dramatically. And every team that's in the relegation zone in their own respective leagues are going to think that they can be that team, and they'll pick up a run of form, and that the fixtures will kind them, and they would have got out of it. So I understand why that team in the French league are sort of starting a court case, because there's 99% chance that they that weren't going to get out of it. Just like Liverpool's situation, we know that they've won the league. They're that far clear. It's nigh on impossible they'll be caught. But do you think Manchester City would take that? They just won't, will they? Because it's mathematically still possible. There's no way that they would just let the Premier League award it to Liverpool. They'll fight, would they? It's a minefield. It is a minefield.
In my head, if the Premier League were to award Liverpool the championship, I don't think too many clubs would be so quick to launch an appeal to that. I mean, I think that you look at the Manchester City players, the Manchester City manager, before this all kicked off, they were saying in the media, "Oh yeah, don't worry about us. Liverpool have won it." They'd all conceded the title anyway.
Celtic were quite a good bit clear, but haven't they voted to void off that league as well?
The only problem is, if you void it off, then that's unfortunate for Liverpool fans. Of course, it's really good for Norwich. You'll have to go through another league where you've got teams like Norwich who clearly aren't worthy of being in the Premier League anymore. But if that's the case, then you've got to start the Champions League with the 4 teams that qualified last year. I don't think you can award Europa League to Sheffield. I don't, and the club that deserved it, of course. But if you void it, I wouldn't give European football to Sheffield like they would get on sporting merit. You'd have to repeat the season as if it would never played. And for me, that includes the Champions League spots as well.
Yeah, interesting, lads. Very interesting. It's gonna be a mad month coming up. It really, really is. So just to round up, then, because we'll come away from this in a moment. So when I'll give you both, pick a month. So when do you want football back?
Want or think it will come back?
Well, I'll tell you what, when do you want it back, and when do you think it will come back?
I wanted it back in March, and I think it will come back. I would say mid to end July, and how that works with obviously it being done in time for the next season, I have no idea. I don't get paid enough to find the answers for that. But when will we see football again? I would say sort of middle July, possibly August.
I think I want it back as soon as possible. I think everyone does. I'm not a person in any position of power to be able to make those decisions, so I'm fine in my own conscience to want it back now. But with regards to when I think it'll come back, I think a lot will depend on the Bundesliga and how successful that is. That's starting mid-May. So if that goes well, I think we could probably expect to see it as early as end of June. If it goes badly, then that's a whole different...
The only thing with Germany is they're such a good example of a country that's dealt with the coronavirus so much better than us.
Yeah.
The Germans are just more efficient than us, so obviously their timeline is better than ours. But yeah, I mean, if they pave the way and show what we could maybe do, then yeah, there's a chance it could be sooner.
Yeah, I'm going September, only because our incompetencies as a British Isle mean that I don't trust the people in charge, and I think there's a few more chapters left in this story. So,
do you see the professor from Sage who had to leave his post? Because he actually recommended the government that everyone needs to isolate and social distance, and he couldn't even stick to the rule himself. How do we expect us to follow it when someone who came up with it doesn't follow it? It blows my mind.
I know, bro, I know. Sad times, lads, sad times. But what we'll do, we'll go into a subject now very quickly as well. We'll just touch upon it. We did a video on it just recently, and it's very close to Reese's heart, and it's a Newcastle takeover. So we'll touch upon that very quickly. Reese, your thoughts on Newcastle United becoming Saudi Arabia FC? How do you feel about it?
I love it. I love the idea of it. I think there's a couple of elements. I did a video for you guys, and you haven't seen it, check it out. But it just goes into where it's come from and why people have got problems with it, why it might not go through. I think Mike Ashley's ruined Newcastle from where they used to be. I mean, they used to be a fantastic club, European powerhouse, you'd say. I mean, they were Champions League every season for about 5 to 10 years. They were enjoying essentially what Tottenham have got now, with no trophies essentially. And now with the takeover, this guy is one. I think he's the most wealthy guy in the world. I mean, if they get taken over, they'll be worth 10 times that of Man City.
Yeah.
Problem is that the guy who would be taking us over didn't kill Jamal Khashoggi, and is an advocate of terrible rights for women in Saudi Arabia and things like that. Personally, I don't mind him taking over the two. I'll take his money no matter which way it comes.
Blood money, Reese. The blood money's rolling in.
I don't care. It sounds bad, but
FIFA in his head. What are we going to sign?
That's it. I mean, I think as a Newcastle fan, it's very hard not to be unbiased. I desperately want the takeover to go through. That being said, if I had a choice out of the Saudi Arabian owner and a normal sort of not corrupt, different owner without these issues with the same amount of wealth, then of course I choose the latter. But I don't have that choice.
Yeah.
All I know is that if we're just talking purely football, then yeah, it's a great thing for the club.
I think Newcastle fans are in kind of the unique situation that they have an owner currently that has treated them so badly, and they resent so much that it's almost the case that just someone else, please, someone else own this club. And in this situation, like the amount of money that could get pumped into that club, and the examples of like Man City and what they could become, is such like, it's so exciting for them, and it just seems a little bit tainted, obviously, where the money's coming from. But I think going back to how much they hate Mike Ashley, they'll just take it. They just want to take it because it's so much better than what they've got. Can I just ask, Reece, what is the current situation with the takeover?
Yeah, so where it's gone to is that over the course of February and March, talks occurred. A figure was agreed that was about £300 million. It was 340 last year. Ashley's obviously had to reduce that price because of he's not immune to COVID-19. So he's reduced that price to 300 million, which was agreed. They have now paid a £17 million deposit, or simply a holding fee to try and get a mutual understanding that no one else is going to enter the bidding war for the club. So essentially the deal is only with these prospective owners. That's headed up by Amanda Stavely, who represents the Reuben brothers, and Mohammed bin Salman, who is part of the Saudi royal family. They've obviously paid that £70 million deposit. They've set up companies on Companies House in the UK to be able to acquire Newcastle. Where now at the Premier League owners and directors checks, that's where the problems come in. There are some issues like I just outlined. The fact that the guy who's taking us over with the majority shareholder, he is regarded as a shady individual, just because he's associated with the injustices that are going on in Saudi Arabia at the moment. Those tests were expected to take 4 weeks. We have now gotten to 4 weeks as of either today or tomorrow. The exclusivity agreement that the £17 million bond was paid for runs out on Friday. So after that time, Mike Ashley will no longer have an obligation to sell the club, and he will be able to pocket that £17 million.
That's a hell of a deal, that is, lads. Let me tell you.
It looks like the Premier League will approve the owners' test at any point. When that occurs, the funds will have to be transferred, and as soon as that happens, the club will be transferred to Mohammed bin Salman's ownership. But we're still waiting on that green light for the Premier League checks.
So you know the powers that be in the Premier League who do these checks, like knowing what they know about the Saudi Arabian owners, like how could it be possible that he could pass that checks and they could allow him to pass it, know what they know about him?
So they have current procedures in place that satisfy the fit and proper persons test, which is one of the checks that they do. There are no red flags on the owner that's going to take us over. The problem is that they haven't really factored in for someone of this notoriety, let's say. They can't change those procedures to fit a rejection for this man. They can approve it and then change those procedures. It sounds strange to say, it sounds like a backward system, but it sounds like they're not happy with it, but they don't really have a leg to stand on to not approve it.
So they just tick the current boxes, basically, there's nothing they can do about it.
It looks like he's ticking all the boxes currently, but I think future owners would have to satisfy slightly different tests.
It's a bit of a weird format when you consider every single billionaire in the world is relatively shady. You would think there would be some sort of rule in place where the shady billionaire rule.
And that's the thing. I guess people can talk, can't they? But there's probably a reason why these tests aren't in place yet. People look at people like Roman Abramovich. He's big friends with Putin. Reportedly, I think that there are reasons why we don't look into people's private lives. We don't look into certain things because as long as the Premier League shut their eyes to certain things, they can see hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of pounds enter the Premier League, which is good for business.
I don't want to be turning over those stones looking for dirt on Putin and family. You just buy what you want. I don't mind. I'm cool with it. Like, just don't hurt me. Do you know what I mean? But it's interesting. Going back to obviously the Jamal Khashoggi thing, Reece. Let's say, for example, there is disdain among the press in this country. Do they now have to be worried about their lives if they criticise the Saudi owners in any way? I mean, they have form, you know.
I don't think so. I think if we that would transcend football at a point. If that would be sort of an act of war, wouldn't it? But I
would say stranger things have happened. I would. And what's interesting is it is blood money that's being used, but it is like you said, it is what it is. There's no other choice. I would be interested, right? And this is just a hypothetical scenario I came up with for you. So Becky, you can play along as well if you want. Let's say Saddam Hussein was still alive today. He said, I want to buy Newcastle United Football Club. Would you be comfortable with that, Reece?
He'd have a statue within 3 years. As long as he takes it off Mike Ashley, it wouldn't really matter.
That's the thing. Yeah, Newcastle fans do not care who it is as long as Mike Ashley is gone. But it's tricky.
It's because of what they're comparing to what they've got now. It's like Reece said, if they had a reasonable owner that was okay, who invested a bit of money, but they wanted a bit more. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't so bad. I don't think they'd share the same attitude as they do now.
Yeah.
What I think is a big discussion point is what airline is St James's Park going to be named after now?
Get them Sports Direct signs as far from the stadium as possible, and I'll be happy. I think the problem is for a lot of Newcastle fans, like myself. I mean, pretty much 80-90% of the fan base, people weren't alive in 1969 when we won our last major trophy. Nor do they have any memory of a lot of things. Personally, I don't have a memory of the entertainers of the 90s. Most of Alan Shearer's prime, I don't have a lot of memory of. The only thing I've got a memory of really is the end of Freddie Shepherd's ownership. Mike Ashley coming in, 2 relegations in 10 years, mediocrity, lack of investment, and to have that dangled in front of you that all of a sudden it's going to change. You're signing Coutinho, Koulibaly, we're getting Pochettino as manager. It's too hard not to say yes to.
And the thing is that if it does go through, they take over and the investment starts coming in, if they're just going to be silent owners, do you know what I mean, where we don't hear a lot from them, people will soon forget. People will soon stop asking questions as long as they're silent, Then it's not like they're going to own Newcastle and be in the bloody media every week, do you know what I mean, for doing X, Y, and Z wrong. I'm assuming they'll come in, invest money, and who's to say Newcastle in the next, in 5 years' time won't be a powerhouse competing for trophies, So that's what they want, and that's potentially what they'll get. So
yeah, no, very true. That's very true. The devil in a red dress is showing up in Newcastle, and boy, it's going to shake up the league. I'm looking forward to it in a way, but we'll draw a line under that, because obviously if you want to see the rest, go watch Reese's video. It's all on there. Moving forward, just onto just a bit of transfer stuff, lads, as well, because I know it's very quiet. Nobody knows what's going to be transfer window. But I just wanted to ask you both, who do you think will be the biggest transfer of the summer?
I mean, the problem with that is the summer transfer window, does it go ahead as normal? Do you know what I mean? So,
and also, there's going to be a lot of free agents out there.
Yeah.
A whole lot of free agents.
Let's operate on the assumption that we will have some form of summer-ish transfer window. I think there's a good chance of Jadon Sancho going to a Premier League club for big money. And I think Chelsea have already got Ziyech sort of nailed down.
Ziyech is on board, yeah.
Big sign.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the sort of transfer news is a bit stale, isn't it? Because it's not important.
No one wants to write any rumours, because they know it's not feasible that it could be correct. But I mean, if we're looking at potentials, Timo Werner has come on record and said that he is very interested in joining Liverpool, and for that reason, he's not signing a contract extension, I believe, at Leipzig. If the takeover goes through with Newcastle, we could see a whole plethora of big names being linked.
Mbappe.
Not Mbappe, but I think Coutinho could be realistic if they could get a takeover.
Gareth Bale, do you reckon maybe?
He's. I've read somewhere that he could be interested as well in Newcastle, but I wouldn't imagine Bale will go to Newcastle.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a whole lot of names, isn't there? There's quite a few people being linked.
The thing is, with Timo Werner, I've heard that Liverpool aren't overly fussed on taking him because they don't want to disrupt that front three that they've got.
Nowhere to put. Yeah, I'm with you there, Becky. There's nowhere to put Timo Werner in that lineup. There's nowhere in there. Sancho accommodates himself well into a United lineup, but Werner doesn't accommodate himself well.
For me, if Liverpool don't spend, then they don't win. They don't win the next Premier League, and they don't win it comfortably because they didn't spend last summer, and they're not as good. I mean, I know that they have been unbeaten, but they haven't played as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? They're not as good as they were last year, but they're so much better than the rest. But which is an interesting sort of debate in itself. But with Liverpool, I think if they are to strengthen, they actually need someone like the Coutinho that they had before. Do you know what I mean? They've got the front three, which create and score so many goals, but when they aren't firing, you don't get. There's not a genius behind them in terms of like your Henderson or your Keita or Fabinho. They're not creative geniuses, are they? So think they need someone behind the front three that can just do something out of nothing.
They need somebody that they can interchange with Roberto Firmino. If one of Mane, Firmino, or Salah gets any lengthy injury, then we may as well chalk their season off.
Yeah.
They need somebody that they can call on as a number 10, as a striker, as a stand-in winger. And Divock Origi is not that man for me.
No, he's definitely not.
So, Becky, you're going to go with Sancho as your sort of pick. Reece, do you want to pick a name? Throw a name out there.
Pick Coutinho, just because I do believe the takeover will go through.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to say Pogba. I think Pogba will leave this summer. I think he'll go. Yeah, I think he'll go. I think the time is right for him to go. I can see United have been so heavily linked with Grealish as well. I can only see really Grealish going there if Pogba goes. But yeah, so I'll go Pogba.
Pogba's the second biggest virus to leave England, eh?
Oh, that's not going to go down well. But fuck them. Who cares? It's our podcast. But yeah, no, that's interesting, lads. It'll be. I'm hoping the transfer window they announce something relatively shortly. Obviously, start of May now. Ideally, I mean, when does the transfer window open usually? Is it the 30th of June? Is it, or is it the?
It's around that date, yeah.
Around that date, yes. We got a bit of time to work with. There's plenty of time left to play with. It's just, I'd be curious to see what happens. I suppose the focus is primarily to obviously try and get some football played first. Just going back to transfers, obviously from a Manchester United standpoint, I wanted to discuss Jude Bellingham. Now, Jude Bellingham, for those who don't know, is 16 years old, very, very talented boy, tearing up the Championship. Birmingham are desperately going to need money. It's looking like he has his choice of Dortmund or United. So it's going to be about 35 million. Probably rising to maybe 50 million. So a 16-year-old at 35 million pounds, where does he go and why does he go there? Would you pick a United or a Dortmund?
So, I mean, if I was him, I would pick Dortmund. I just think his chances of development are better. I mean, if I'm United, I think if we are going to take a punt on him and he does want to come to United, the best thing we could do is buy him and loan him back to Birmingham City. For a good couple of seasons. I've watched many a highlight of him. I've caught the odd championship game. I mean, he looks like a good prospect, right? He looks like a great prospect. For 16 years old, he's got a lot of attributes. But, how many great prospects have we seen before? If they've got a similar player to United in Angel Gomez, with similar abilities and talents within their own ranks, which they don't take that many chances on. So why they would spend between 35 and 50 million to buy a 16-year-old who, like you say, he's doing very well in the Championship. He's hot property. But if you see the amount of time on the ball that he gets in the Championship compared to what he would come up against in the Premier League, I think the step up is far too high. And the only feasible options, if they buy him, he would have to be loaned to Dortmund. Loan to Dortmund or loan him back to Birmingham.
One thing, you guys, I think it might be easy to overlook as well. If just for a minute, imagine you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and you've got full control of transfers. You're given 150 million. I think that's a reasonable amount to have as a transfer budget for Manchester United. Are you going to spend a third of that on a 16-year-old you're not going to play?
Well, that's it. That's the question we need to ask because...
Be able to break into that top four.
No, I don't know if you actually saw it, lads, but Bellingham had the tour of, I think it was Old Trafford and Carrington, and Sir Alex showed him round. So they really mean business with the deal. And obviously, I'm kind of with you, lads. I don't really understand why United want him so bad. I mean, obviously, yes, he oozes potential. Right? We know this already. He's built like a brick shit house for someone his age. He gets around the pitch well. He's technically very gifted. But if you have, let's say Pogba stays, you've got Pogba, you've got Fernandes, you've got Matic, you've got McTominay, you've got Fred, you've got Gomez, you've got Garner, Dylan Levitt, another young Welsh international. He's really highly thought of at Old Trafford as well. Where does he fit into that? I can't understand why United would go so far out of their way to give a 16-year-old a tour of Old Trafford.
You know what it is, don't you? It's the prospect of somebody else having him, I think, is the problem. It goes to another big club and just so happens to be a superstar is the concern. But remember, go back to when Nick Powell was for Crewe.
Yeah, that's another one, bro. That's the example I was going to use, yeah.
And, you know, and he was the next best thing, and we were pulling all the stops to get his signature, and we got him, and he made like 4 appearances, substitute appearances, and then he ended up back in League One. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you've got to take into consideration as well, for as talented as he is, and I have seen enough, you know, he's very technically sound, and he's got a lot of attributes, but he's 16 years old. Like, it's one thing having the ability, but having like the temperament being thrown in, he's too young. I know they say if you're good enough, you're old enough, but I just don't think that someone of his age, I don't see the logic behind spending that much money, unless they see it as a massive future investment.
Especially for someone with no Premier League experience whatsoever, no experience at that level.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because he's English, he's got that English tax.
Yeah, if United have got between 150 and 200 million to spend, right? If they could get him for about 30, with the view of loaning him back to the Championship or even like abroad, then I mean, I would say okay, I'll roll with that and maybe see where that goes. But they tend on spending 50-something million on him and potentially try and give him his opportunity in the first team. I think it's a waste of time. Yeah,
no, I would agree, bro. I'm not with that transfer. I think it'll happen. I think for some reason, I think his father used to be a professional football player. So from a family standpoint, they're very level-headed. They're quite screwed on. And I think they would like him to go to maybe Germany. But because he's so young, obviously, trying to adapt to Germany, I think he could probably do it. But going at 16 to Germany at a young age is tough, whereas Manchester's only up the road. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer. That's a transfer I think we'll keep an eye on as well, because he would be one of the, I don't know who the most expensive teenager was in the world, but I mean, United only paid 30 million for Wayne Rooney back in the day, right? So he'd immediately be costing more than Rooney. And
it'll be Mbappe, won't it?
Yeah, actually, yeah, probably would be. Yeah, it would be Mbappe. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So there we are then, lads. I mean, in terms of other news, was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I mean, we're all going. There's some uncertainty at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably it for now, but you know, you give it another 4 or 5 days or a week, and I'm sure things would have moved on. We'll have so much more to talk about again. So hold tight.
No doubt. So people, we will be back probably very shortly. We've got some interviews lined up, hopefully. People from all across sport, maybe comedy, fitness, food, all aspects of culture. So make sure you subscribe, like the video, add us up on the social media platforms. We're all very sociable boys. We've nothing else to do anyway. So make sure you get on it with us. And we'll see you next time, people. Take care. Ciao.
Ciao.